All right, everybody, this is John. I'm coming at you with a follow-up from my original Oboz Sawtooth low non-waterproof boot that I originally gave a first look about a year ago. And I realized looking at that video that I said that I would do a final review, which I never did. So I guess I want to do this as a final review. I've hiked around with this for about a year. It's not been my sole hiking boot, but I have hiked on it for a while. In terms of any things that I have noticed that has changed, I believe that it has gotten a little bit softer. It definitely has broken in, but you can see it's actually still pretty stable. It's got a really nice kind of ground of stability. Things that I've done, I actually put my Superfeet orange in here just because I want a little bit more cushion. I want a little bit better arch support. But otherwise, like, I think it's generally a pretty good amount of arch support for most people anyways. For me, it's just what I would personally want. I've noticed the tread has obviously worn, which is fine. You know, obviously if you're going to be hiking, I don't know how many miles I put on this, probably, I don't know, let's say at least 100 to 200, possibly more. I mean, the smaller, finer details have sort of rubbed off, but if you can tell, the overall lugs have generally sort of stayed essentially what you need them to be. So even some of the smaller lugs haven't really kind of rubbed off or like sheared off. So I actually think it holds at least the structure of its lugs really well. It has these multi-directional lugs, which I think are very helpful. In terms of traction, I think it's fairly similar as it had been, maybe slightly less traction, and it might just be today's terrain is, particularly slippery. In terms of others, things I definitely would say I noticed, because today was very, very muddy. Actually, even though this is the non-waterproof version, I had the top of my shoe soaked in the mud several times, and it only after like multiple times doing it did it really start feeling, my feet really start feeling wet. Now, having said that, it's probably just because this mesh here is basically kind of like a sponge. So it just sort of sponges up a lot of the water, the moisture, and then, obviously eventually it'll dry off. At least that's what I'm hoping it'll do overnight. Overall, I think I gave it like a 7 or 8 out of 10. I think it's generally correct. I don't think I would change that. I just saw a guy who was an AT through hiker, who was one of the few people I saw around here not wearing any kind of trail runners, and I asked him, and he said he really liked the Oboz, specifically their waterproof B-Dry version. He actually said that really seemed to be helpful, and he didn't think that it caused any problems in terms of if it got wet all the way through, that it didn't dry out eventually, and it sounded like it did dry out pretty well. And he suggested actually that would be a better option overall for if you're a through hiker. So that's kind of his opinion. One thing that I'll say that I actually did, I mentioned that it wasn't as locked in the heel, and I did what this lacing technique they call the runner's loop or the heel lock. And basically what it is it's a way for you to you loop the lace up vertically, and then you creates this little area here where you put the opposite lace in, and that basically allows you to tighten the shoe further in so that it makes the opening as sort of tight as possible, so it locks your heel in. So I actually found that to be really, really helpful. Things that I've noticed about this, and this is basically more just sort of my issue. I actually previously laced this very, very tightly just because I had pretty narrow feet. I've succumbed to what I call the ultra trail runner conspiracy, where I also wear a lot of ultras sort of day to day, and so I think that maybe like widened out my foot a little bit, and so now sometimes the toe box feels a little bit too tight on my right foot, and so I actually have to like loosen the laces a little bit. So that's your mileage may vary, as long as you don't end up like drinking the ultra Kool-Aid and just wearing them all the time and your feet sort of widen out and you get used to a wider toe box. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I always say that Oboz makes a good product, and I think that I'll stand by that. I think that if you like kind of more of a traditional hiking shoe or hiking boot, Oboz would make a really good product for the price. Yeah, and so my review stands 7 or 8 or whatever I said out of 10 on the Owen scale of pickiness. So I hope that this rest of this review has been useful, so you to see the wear that has happened and if my opinions have changed any. And I'll be catching you in the next video.